The FIA has done it again. They've just revealed new updates on the use of DRS, and it's going to change the dynamics of Formula 1 forever. So in today's video, we'll be looking through these changes and also discussing what their effects will be. Let's dive right in. The DRS, which stands for the Drag Reduction System, was first introduced into F1 in 2011 to help drivers overtake better during racing. Several drivers were excited to have a fancy button they could push to get ahead of their rivals. But many fans felt it only took out the excitement of racing. Soon they began clamoring for the DRS to be axed. Although the FIA initially turned a deaf ear, now over 10 years later, it seems like the fans are going to get what they want. But we'll get to that. So what exactly is the DRS, and how does it work? The DRS system involves the driver opening a flap in the middle of their car's rear wing, using a button on the steering wheel, and this leads to a decrease in drag levels and an increase in the velocity of the car, making it easier for cars to overtake the car in front of them. Initially, when the system was launched, DRS could be used anywhere on the track, and a major amount of overtakes were recorded. But to create a car with a perfect DRS, many teams made several changes and only ended up with cars that were suitable for practice, but not actual races where drivers had to race wheel to wheel. So in 2013, the rules were changed and DRS activation zones were created. These zones are designated parts of the track where drivers can make use of the DRS. Also, the DRS could be used only when one car is within 1 second of another driver. Nonetheless, it still served its purpose. Only that the DRS might have served its purpose a little bit too well, and several drivers can hardly overtake without making use of the system, which is a problem. In fact, former Aston Martin driver Sebastian Vettel shared how much he disliked the system when it was introduced in 2011. He said if the FIA's intention of adding the system was to spice things up on the grid, they made the wrong choice. I don't like it. I think it's artificial. I think we should find a different way to make the cars follow each other closer and not have DRS. And when the years went by and the DRS became a norm, he confirmed that they had only gotten overly dependent on pushing the button to help them overtake. I'm only a bit cautious about the DRS because it was brought in as assistance to help overtaking, but now it feels a bit like it's the only one that allows you to overtake at times. Let's quickly look through the data about how the DRS has performed so far, but let's start by looking at the number of overtakes before DRS came into the picture. In the 2009 season, the FIA made regulation changes to improve the overtaking process. The cars were smaller, with more streamlined aerodynamics, and everyone was excited to see what difference it would make, but it didn't perform as expected. Using Raw GP 2009 as an example, that season there were only 301 overtakes for the race, less than that of 2008, which was 366, and that of 2007 and 2006, which were 376 and 345 respectively. It was later figured out that the low number of overtakes was due to the constant refueling that year. So in 2010, the refueling was removed and the number of overtakes doubled, but the FIA was still not pleased, and in 2011, the DRS was finally introduced. Now the presence of the DRS changed the game completely. In fact, in 2010, the average number of overtakes was 615, and it skyrocketed to 1,249 after the system was added. Most people found it super cool that drivers could push buttons and get ahead of their rivals, which meant that the races were a lot more competitive, and it was amazing. But the excitement soon waned, because despite the overtakes, the absence of wheel-to-wheel racing where a driver fought to overtake took out the fun. For instance, in the 2022 F1 season, 994 overtakes were recorded, which was quite high of course, but everyone can agree that the number of overtakes didn't help one bit, and that season was one of the worst ever. So that shows that the purpose the DRS served declined over the years, and when something does not work anymore, the best thing to do is to make the necessary changes. That was exactly what the FIA did. So what changes have been made? In 2021, the FIA regulations started fixing the regulations that made Formula 1 less competitive in the past, and it was expected that the DRS would get the boot too. But when 2022 came and nothing about the DRS was mentioned in the long list of changes in aerodynamics, everyone thought the system was going to stay. However, this season, the FIA revealed that there'd be changes to the DRS zones of several tracks visited, at least the first 5 tracks, and it would change how easy overtaking with DRS was. But nothing prepared the drivers for what actually went down on the tracks. At the Bahrain Grand Prix, the DRS zone was made significantly shorter on the straights, but it didn't disturb the drivers who were able to race without much complaint. But fast forward to the changes that were made to the Baku and Miami Grand Prix, the drivers just couldn't believe the DRS zone would be made that short, even almost non-existent. In Azerbaijan, the second DRS zone was made 100 meters shorter than usual, and in Miami, 2 of the DRS zones were reduced by 75 meters. This caused a major heartbreak. Although the F1 drivers that have witnessed the glorious days without DRS are quite happy with these changes, several new drivers are just not having it. The Mercedes driver George Russell said it would be much better if the FIA had involved them in the decision making, as the lack of DRS made the race at Baku extremely boring. I think all of us didn't really understand why they've been shortened. None of us were consulted about it or asked our opinion on it, and I think the race speaks for itself in Baku. DRS is there to avoid overtaking, and it's always exciting when you've got these big DRS advantages, and it allows you to fight, and clearly in Baku, it was way too short. Charles Leclerc of Ferrari also shared similar views. In fact, he stated outrightly that the reduction of the DRS was not the correct direction to go in. Yeah, I don't think it's the right direction. I think with the cars that we have at the moment, it's still quite difficult to follow. It's better than the previous generation cars, but still not good enough to actually have less DRs. So hopefully in the races we won't shorten them. Despite all these statements, the FIA is still hoping to completely remove the DRS in the nearest future, because they believe it gives some teams an edge over the others, and they don't want that. Red Bull, for instance, started enjoying that privilege when they made a perfect DRS system. One of the things that have made Red Bull's performance incredible since the 2022 season is that they were able to make the necessary aerodynamic adjustments while still creating a perfect DRS system. Although so far, they're still at the top despite the reduction in the DRS zones, there have been instances where they have had their struggles, and we really can't tell what the future holds. As regards the complete removal of the DRS, FIA's single-seater director Tom Bazis doesn't think it's possible. He said, though things are now better than in the 80s, there are several circuits where it would be almost impossible to overtake without DRS. And since these modern F1 cars are still producing the dirty air that hinders them from overtaking, it would be quite risky to remove the system. Despite his statement, one thing is certain: if the FIA decides to completely remove the DRS, they will provide an alternative for drivers to use, and the drivers will have to adjust to the new rules anyway. Tom Bazis also mentioned that the new F1 will be well defined in 2024, so everyone should brace themselves. But for now, they have to live with the shortened DRS, and this might be an opportunity for Hamilton and Alonso to steal the championship title from the Red Bull drivers, since one of the best things about their car has been rendered useless. In time, we'll see how everything turns out.